This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. South Park just did an episode on Peter Thiel about the Antichrist and, of course, Donald Trump having a baby with Satan. This is the world we're living in 2025. And I want to talk to you about all of this because Peter Thiel has been giving lectures around the country for the last couple of years on the Antichrist. And there's a lot of interesting things here that people need to pay attention to. But Peter Thiel is not a household name, and he should be. He should be known just as much as Elon Musk, just as much as Jeff Bezos, just as much as any of these guys in big tech, Silicon Valley, like Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg, because Peter Thiel is responsible for bringing in Big Brother and the beast system. And when you listen to him speak about the Antichrist, even though South Park is making a joke and making light of it, it's actually Peter Thiel who is ushering in the beast system using his company, Palantir. So let me give you a brief rundown on Peter Thiel. Then I'll show you what they did on South Park, which, again, they use comedy to deflect on what's actually occurring. We know that they always use comedy to deflect. It's a form of mind control to desensitize people. If something serious happens, they use comedy to make people shrug it off and look at it as if, oh, right, it's just a conspiracy theory. Oh, just right. It's not something that's actually happening, but it is something that's actually happening. Peter Thiel, who is working hand in hand with the White House, is bringing in the Antichrist beast system. So he's been talking about this for quite some time. But the background on Peter Thiel, for anyone that doesn't know, Peter Thiel is one of the co-founders of PayPal along with Elon Musk. All of these guys who are big tech CEOs and big tech tycoons, they've all been recruited by the government beforehand. They are bringing in DARPA technology. This technology is not something that they're innovating. It's something they're selling to you. These shell corporations sell you government technology, surveillance technology. It's a ruse. You're buying this technology thinking that this technology is for you. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's to better your life. Everybody else has this tech. You may as well have this tech. But if you realize that this was really the government who has shell corporations like Apple, like Tesla, who are bringing in all of this stuff that is for the enslavement grid, then you would not be purchasing this technology. If the government came to your front door and told you to have a cell phone back in 2000, you would have said no, absolutely not, because you would have thought you were being tracked and monitored and listened to, especially after the Patriot Act. But these guys act as company men, and they sell you their products because they need you to willingly participate and willingly purchase these things and bring them into your home, like all of the technology I've exposed over the years with Amazon. So Peter Thiel has pivoted from PayPal and is now the front man for Palantir along with Alex Karp. Palantir, which I've broken down on the website, I did a very long video on it, is Big Brother. The theory of Big Brother 1984 is Palantir. Everything Palantir stands for is what Big Brother is going to be. It is the surveillance state. It is full-on tracking and monitoring, which is part of the reason I believe they've brought a lot of us back to YouTube, is for data surveillance and to do data mining on people like me and all of you who listen to the channel. And the only escape from it is to leave the internet. The only escape is to completely remove your footprint, or as they like to call it, your online footprint. So Peter Thiel's Palantir bringing in Big Brother. Peter Thiel's in bed with Donald Trump. Peter Thiel's connected to pretty much everybody in the White House. Most people know he's directly connected, obviously I mentioned Elon Musk, to J.D. Vance as well. He also has a direct connection to Jeffrey Epstein, which you may have noticed no one's really talking about since the Charlie Kirk assassination. I will do a breakdown on Jeffrey Epstein at some time here in the future, which I promised that I would do, because there's truth and then there's psyops involved with Jeffrey Epstein. The psyop are the things the government feeds you, like flight logs, and get you to go down their rabbit hole instead of looking at what Jeffrey Epstein was really doing on his Zorro Ranch with people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, which is eugenics and transhumanism. Jeffrey Epstein was obsessed with it. So more on the background of Peter Thiel real quickly. Father Arnie Panula, many of you may not know, but he was the head of Opus Dei in the United States of America. Opus Dei is a Roman Catholic organization that works directly and has worked directly with the CIA and the Vatican. For those of you that don't know, during the Cold War, the CIA and the Vatican collaborated with right-wing Catholic groups to counter liberation theology They describe Opus Dei members who were strategically positioned in areas like law and finance as functioning as a network that supported the Vatican's goal, and claimed the CIA was interested in or worked with these groups. Opus Dei has stated its aims are spiritual and not political, but they are directly connected to the government. And this Father Arnie Panula, who was the head of the Opus Dei, openly recruited Peter Thiel at Stanford. This is from an article on the passing of Father Panula. It says, quote, Father Arnie graduated from Harvard, where he discovered Opus Dei and took a doctorate in theology at the University of Navarre in Pamplona, Spain. He wrote his thesis, hundreds of pages, on John Henry Newman and divine providence and how providential was his life. I never knew until he passed that he was close friends with Silicon Valley billionaire investor Peter Thiel. Father Arnie befriended Thiel when Thiel was an undergraduate at Stanford, and Father Arnie ran the Opus Dei house. God knows the other notables who ducked into his office regularly, of course, because this is what they do. This is how they recruit. The government recruits these people. And a lot of the Antichrist doctrine that you're going to hear from Peter Thiel comes directly from some of the things written by Father Arnie Panula. So let me quickly play this clip of Peter Thiel in the past, talking about how technology is going to be the alternative to politics. And what you're seeing right now is the destruction of the current infrastructure that we have as we move towards this technocracy, this communist technocracy, where everything is going to be run through technology and corporations like Palantir. Listen to him talk about pretty much the hijacking of government and how technology will be the alternative to politics.
The basic idea was that we could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
So the only way technology can be the alternative to politics is if you actually sabotage the government so much where you make the government shut down, the government fight over race, the government fight over immigration, the left and the right down each other's throats, to the point where people are so exhausted that they'll clamor for technology because they'll have more trust in technology than they will have in people. So this episode of South Park had Peter Thiel show up and talk about the Antichrist. Of course, they're making a mockery of Peter Thiel talking about the Antichrist, but there's a lot of truth in what Peter Thiel has been saying about the Antichrist because Peter Thiel is helping usher in the Antichrist. The plot of the show is that Peter Thiel enters the story plotting with J.D. Vance to thwart the birth of the Antichrist, Donald Trump and Satan's baby. Thiel gets Trump to head to Planned Parenthood to try to sneakily ask a doctor to perform an abortion on Satan, but is rebuffed by the doctor who tells him that he'll need someone with expertise on the Antichrist. Enter Peter Thiel, who marches into South Park Elementary and lays down the law with the faculty about the possible cult the kids are obsessed over. Here are some of the clips from South Park.
Peter Thiel knows about the Antichrist. I'm Peter Thiel, and I know about the Antichrist. Hello, kids. I'm Peter Thiel, and I'm here to talk to you about the Antichrist. The Antichrist is a newer, more human form of Satan that will soon walk the earth. See, Satan was a fallen angel, and God punished him. So Satan could never have a baby until along came Mr. Donald Trump. Hey, the Antichrist is coming. The Bible refers to the eagle, which refers to America, the fourth seal broken and hell coming to earth. I'm Peter Thiel, and I know about the Antichrist. I'm Peter Thiel. I'm here to help our country.
So, of course, they use humor to make a mockery even of the notion of the Antichrist, because a lot of Christians aren't paying attention to the Antichrist. Peter Thiel is helping usher in the Antichrist, and he's giving these lectures at universities about how he believes the Antichrist will come into power. And everything he's talking about is actually what is occurring with what we're seeing in the world today, including the technology that Peter Thiel and Palantir are unleashing. Listen to this interview that he's given, and he's given many, where he talks about the Antichrist and how the Antichrist can come into power.
I think it was Ivan Illich who said that in the time before Christ, there were many forerunners to Christ. In the time after Christ, there will be many forerunners of the Antichrist. So in some sense, it's a type. So Nero was a type of the Antichrist, or maybe Napoleon was a type of the Antichrist. And it's sort of it's someone who aspires for world domination, to create, creation of this sort of one world state. In some ways, Alexander the Great was sort of a pre-Christ prototype of the Antichrist. It's sort of very parallel to Christ. They both die at 33. Alexander conquers the world. Christ saves it. So sort of a compare and contrast. So, but in some sense, the Antichrist as an idea is something that really comes into being in the world after Christ. And so there's, and then there's a lot of things about it that are mysterious. In some ways, the Antichrist copies Christ. The Antichrist pretends to be greater than Christ, hyper-Christian, ultra-Christian, and then maybe only ultimately, deeply, deeply anti-Christian. You can think of it as a system, where maybe communism is a one-world system. So it can be an ideology or a system. And then of course, you can also think of it as Newman did, where it's sort of the final dictator of the one world state, where it's still, you stress it more as a person. You can think of it as a type, a system, a person. How does a sort of world takeover actually happen? And it's kind of not a deus ex machina, but like a daemonium ex machina. It's like the Antichrist just gives these hypnotic speeches where nobody can remember a word, and then sort of just swindles people's souls out of them, and they submit to this totalitarian state or something like this. And I think if we were to speculate on how to solve that plot hole, we have an answer in the world after 1945, that people are in 1900, early 20th century, people were not yet scared of apocalyptic weapons. They could not imagine, anything of the scale that we'd have by the second half of the 20th century. And so the Antichrist takes over by talking about Armageddon.
So it's interesting to note how they use South Park, they use humor, while Peter Thiel is out there speaking about these things that people should be saying, there's a lot of truth to what this guy's saying. What is this guy really involved in? Who is this guy? Because he's not a household name, and he needs to become a household name. People need to realize what they're doing in Silicon Valley and how they're using this DARPA technology to enslave us, and they're currently building out these data centers for our permanent enslavement. But let's look at each little thing that he said in that clip. He talked about a final dictator. Isn't it interesting to note that Trump told Christians a few years ago they'll never have to vote again after this election? How many times have we heard about Trump seeking a third term? Him saying he's not joking about a third term. In fact, he may never leave office. Why end at 2028? Why not go all the way to 2032? Even this week, they're talking about, again, Trump 2028 talk is ramping up among Republicans. Gavin Newsom warning, going on talk shows, talking about how he doesn't think that Trump is going to leave office. Don't forget that book, The Last President by Ingersoll Lockwood, that the plot of the book was the last president was described as a nation plunged into chaos after a populist outsider wins the U.S. presidential election in 1896. And of course, there's the bizarre connection between Ingersoll Lockwood and his books, including the Baron Trump collection, The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump, The Last President, Seeking a Third Term, talking about never leaving office. What else does Peter Thiel mention? He mentions Alexander the Great as a pre-Christ. Is it interesting to note that this week I talked about how President Trump is now being compared to Alexander the Great. President Trump is the Alexander the Great of our time. As Alexander saved the Jews, President Trump is the savior of Israel. What else did he say? Hyper-Christian, ultra-Christian. That the Antichrist would come as somebody who's hyper-Christian and ultra-Christian, right? However, since that assassination attempt, Donald Trump has been aligned with the Christian movement. He has been, all of a sudden, the MAGA conservative movement has turned into Christian nationalism. Trump even saying that he was saved by God to make America great again after the fake assassination attempt, which I broke down in so many different videos, which are available on the website. The hypnosis on Donald Trump is taken to a new level. It was one of the fakest events we've ever seen, but people were under such a spell because they thought that they actually witnessed an assassination attempt on national television with their own eyes. They felt like they were there, and this is the person that they liked, and they created all these, these theories in their mind to think that the deep state was trying to take out Trump when the deep state could easily take out Donald Trump. DARPA has smart bullets that can curve around trees. They could take out Donald Trump any second they want. They have heart attack guns, EMP weapons. They could take him out at any time. They wouldn't do it on national TV so you could see it unless they wanted to put a spell on you, and that's what they did. The nipping of the ear. We saw the kid who couldn't look like he could tie his own shoes or ride a bicycle. Yeah, he got up there, outsmarted the Secret Service, and he missed by an inch, right? And what was the narrative right after that? God would save Donald Trump. All of the right-wing people, all the people at the RNC, the Republican National Convention, how it was divine intervention. We kept hearing it. I broke that down. How over and over, like the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, we heard all these Republicans talk about it. All these pictures that would come out, right? Donald Trump, these embarrassing pictures of these sham, or these are nothing but con artists pretending to be Christians, luring you in. You couldn't even make it up. I mean, if you were going to write something so fake, I mean, this is what you would do if you were making a parody, right? They're all bowing their heads and praying all the time, right? Trump on a knee, the pictures of Jesus with Trump, touched by God. And these lukewarm Christians just buy into it, hook, line, and sinker. So there's your hyper-Christian, ultra-Christian, which Trump perfectly fits the narrative. Then he goes on to say, and then maybe ultimately, deeply anti-Christian. So the man who plays the role of being hyper-Christian is really anti-Christian. Isn't that interesting? How often have we heard Donald Trump recently talk about how he doesn't think he's going to get to heaven? He's mentioned it many times. He doesn't believe he's going to be heaven-bound. We've heard him even say in his speech with a fraudulent slip that I'm not a Christian.
You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian.
And what else have we heard Donald Trump say over and over? The snake poem. You knew damn well I was a snake before you let me in. There's a reason he keeps reading that. It's not because of immigration. It's because he's confessing. He's telling you, right in front of your face.
That snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. I saved you, cried the woman, and you've bit me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. Does that make sense to anybody?
Which is interesting to note because, as I'll mention a little bit later in the video, these hypnotic speeches that Trump gives was another thing mentioned by Peter Thiel. Well, the snake poem's a perfect example. Another thing he mentioned about the Antichrist, speaking about Armageddon. Well, how often does Trump speak about Armageddon? Often. He warned about Armageddon happening tomorrow as the U.S. and Russia have monster nukes, exactly what Peter Thiel described in this previous video about the coming Antichrist. And of course, Peter Thiel talks about the one world system, how it might not just be a man, it would be a system. Well, who's bringing in that system, Peter? Here's Peter actually getting confronted about being the one who's bringing in the beast system.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance and technologies of warfare and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe. But is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
And of course, that's the truth in plain sight, because it is Peter Thiel who is bringing in this beast system, but he's bringing it in as a character. He's ushering in the Antichrist. He's giving you these lectures right in front of your face, where you literally could take all the little things that he's saying and you could say, wow, sounds a lot like what's going on with Donald Trump and the comparisons in the media to Donald Trump, right? And how people are under this spell with Donald Trump. But Peter Thiel's secretive data company is being pushed into policing. And he says those things about hypnotic speeches. Earlier on, he said about hypnotic speeches, right? Trump talking about the snake, nobody paying attention that he's referencing himself. Trump could say this, he could say that. And none of these people are paying attention. They're under such a spell. Trump literally has tapped Peter Thiel and Palantir to compile data on Americans. They're using Palantir to illegally access devices of all American citizens to find out who's an illegal and who isn't, right? Isn't that interesting? While all this is occurring, Trump backed the Stargate project. And all these data centers are getting built out, and nobody has a clue what they are because the alt-right media doesn't talk about it because they keep you distracted with nonsense. Nonsense. Fabricated stories created by the CIA to keep you distracted from what they're really doing. Accelerating federal permitting of data center infrastructure, which is AI governance, which is exactly what the World Economic Forum is all about building. The World Economic Forum, AI Governance Alliance, the United Nations, AI Governance Alliance, NATO, all of them. That's what they're talking about doing. And who's doing it? Donald Trump. So it's safe to say that when he speaks about the Antichrist giving these hypnotic speeches, that Donald Trump's giving very similar ones. Now, you could also look at this theory with South Park and Donald Trump having a baby with Satan to birth the Antichrist as, what about the possibility of Barron Trump, right? Lots of eerie similarities between Barron Trump and the child from the Omen. But the real thing people need to pay attention to with Barron Trump, Donald Trump, and the Antichrist is the fact that all the stuff that was happening with Jeffrey Epstein that nobody talks about, the stuff they discuss are all government-created psychoses, right? The whole theory that he went into the jail cell and somebody killed him, and then they gave you the footage, and they took a minute out of the clip. Jeffrey Epstein was never in jail. He's in witness protection. He's perfectly fine. Just as I'm sure Charlie Kirk is, just like all these government actors are. They take on new roles. They leave the public eye. They give you rabbit holes to consume you, where it's an endless loop, and you beg the government to give you information, All they do is give you controlled information. What was going on at the Zorro Ranch, the 33,000-acre ranch? Give me a break. Jeffrey Epstein was trying to seed the human race with his DNA. He was obsessed and funding constantly the eugenics projects, working directly with CRISPR and gene editing. And all these guys from big tech were down in all the locations. Everyone's looking at the island because they gave you the island. You think they were doing this out in the open? Zorro Ranch was completely underground. Everything going on there was underground. They had birthing factories. It's unbelievable the stuff that was found at Zorro Ranch, but everybody looks at the island because the government tells you, look at the island. You don't hear any of the alt-right media talk about eugenics and transhumanism. You only hear them talk about them being pedos and creeps, which you can all see with your own eyes what these people are because they're ghouls, all of them. So you can look at Barron Trump because many believe Barron Trump was a part of the eugenics project while Donald Trump had been visiting the Zorro Ranch. So there's that theory as well with Barron Trump, which I could break down in more detail in a separate video as well. But I wanted to cover this with Peter Thiel because all the things that he's discussing, there's a lot of similarities to the system he's bringing in and the people that he's backing and supporting who are just actors in place. Just as Peter Thiel is, in a sense, he's a government agent. He was recruited by the government at Stanford. He works for the government. He is not some big tycoon who's smarter than you that's come up with these business ideas. He was recruited and groomed for what he's doing right now. And what he's doing right now is letting you know about the ushering in of the Antichrist. And what they're trying to do, the media and South Park, is make you laugh off the notion of the Antichrist when it's happening right in front of your eyes. And as Peter Thiel said, these hypnotic speeches, that's exactly what's occurring. These hypnotic speeches that Trump is giving, no one's paying attention to what he's actually doing, which is accelerating AI governance infrastructure. And that's what these data centers are for. And before you know it, before you blink, when this is all set up and run, and this technocracy, this communist technocracy, which will probably be under the illusion of Christian nationalism is in place, Christians will think it's the greatest thing ever, and they won't realize that they're now enslaved by the beast system. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.